Welcome to our 8th of this year's collaborations with Riot Games for Latin America. If you want to catch these guides in Spanish, then be sure to check out their channel here. Irelia is a champion that is up there with having the most tools of any champion to outplay your opponent in the game. With insane mobility and damage potential, she's a true carry champion in the right hands. The catch is that she's not so easy to master. In fact, there's often a super high 10% win rate difference between casual Irelia players and Irelia mains. Most champions in comparison have around a 5% win rate difference between casuals and masters, as the skill ceiling is often much lower. So, the rewards are very high when you master this champion, and in today's guide, we're going to drastically accelerate that process as you'll learn everything that you need to know to play Irelia, and the best part is that she's not nearly as mechanical as you probably think. So, there's a lot that you can actually learn here. First, we'll begin with her playstyle, then move into her power spike, some tips and tricks, combos, and finally her build to make sure you know everything needed to stomp your games with her. And let's kick things off with Irelia's playstyle. Irelia is one of the premier duelists in the game. She's got all the trademarks of a powerful 1v1 champion, such as mobility, insane DPS, lifesteal, outplay potential, etc. Starting right from the laning phase, you want to be trying to 1v1 your opponent to really exert your dominance over them. There are very few matchups Irelia can't just steamroll through with her ridiculous passive, and it doesn't stop there. Once the lane phase ends, this playstyle should continue. Ideally, you want to try to constantly find 1v1 or even ridiculously outnumbered fights in a side lane, depending on how strong you are. The more people that you can keep forcing to come deal with you, then the easier it's going to be for the rest of your team to get objectives on other areas of the map. The best part is that Irelia doesn't share the weakness of most dueling side lane champions in the game. Champions like Fiora, Tryndamere, and Jax can actually struggle quite a lot when it comes to teamfighting, making them a bit one-dimensional, where they kind of have to split push all game. Not Irelia though. Her ultimate has insane impact when it comes to teamfights, and she can instantly delete squishies when she gets on top of them. She brings a ton of stuff that other duelists don't have: an AoE stun, on-demand damage reduction, and nearly unlimited mobility. All of these qualities make her a lot less one-dimensional than most other champions like her. Alright, moving on, as far as power spikes go for Irelia, there's only one that you really need to care about, which is when she completes her first core item, which is usually going to be Blade of the Ruined King. Of course, most champions spike when they complete an item, but Irelia becomes much more powerful because it unlocks her Q resets much more easily. We'll dive into this further on into the guide, but once she has one item, Irelia no longer needs to pre-prep caster minions to Q reset off them. Once she's level 9 with a completed item, she can usually start killing caster creeps from full health with a single Q, allowing her to dash around minion waves with much greater ease. Alright, let's delve into the massive chunk of tips and tricks that are required to play this champion. To maximize Irelia's potential, it's not about having crazy mechanics. You just need to have all the knowledge centered around making the most out of both her passive and Q resets. Putting it simply, whenever Irelia has her passive stacked, then the huge amount of AD and attack speed that she gets makes her nearly impossible to fight back against. Likewise, having what feels like infinite dashes makes getting away from her during that timing difficult as well. So let's delve into what you need to know to make the most use out of these two strengths. Without a doubt, one of the most important things to understand as Irelia is utilizing minions as kind of a passage to reach your opponents. Remember that your Q will reset whenever you last hit minions with it. Throughout the laning phase, you want to be aware of low health enemy minions that you can use to gap close to your opponent without expending your Q's cooldown. That way, you may save it to chase even further, allowing you to stick on targets for a tremendous amount of time. To take that a step further, you can actually do something known as minion prepping. Basically, you're just doing your own minion's job for them. If you think you'll have a kill opportunity soon, then you may want to consider auto-attacking a minion that you know your opponent will stand close to shortly. Just like before, instead of waiting for a passage to open for you, you just make one yourself in advance when you know that you'll have a kill opportunity. Usually this is best when you have your passive fully stacked or some other advantages, like a level lead. In this case, Irelia had both. Thanks to the prior minion prep, she's able to close the gap and score an easy first blood. A major reason why this tactic works is because players tend to be very oblivious about what Irelia is doing for some reason. Technically, minion prepping is pretty obvious, but for some reason, when you walk backwards in lane, it gives your opponent a false sense of security. Sometimes, even though they literally just watched you hit a minion to prepare it, they'll still walk right up next to it and allow you to engage with ease. Of course, you can't always prepare minions before you look for an engage though. Knowing specific timings for when you can instantly prepare minions yourself through your abilities is going to be very beneficial for you. The simplest and best way to prep minions is going to come from your W. You can quickly get caster minions low enough so that you can dash to them to get your Q reset. There are 3 timings that you'll want to learn for this trick, at levels 4, 5, and 7. At level 4, you'll need to hold your W down for basically its entire duration, otherwise the caster creeps won't be low enough to kill. At level 5, you can hold your W down for about half its duration to guarantee the Q reset. And finally, at level 7, especially if you've already based for more damage, you can just tap your W and instantly get Q resets available. You should be very sure to learn these timings by heart, as using W to reset is incredibly important for a lot of Irelia's all-in potential. Along the same lines as the W prep is the R prep. Your ultimate does damage to minions that it passes through as well. So you can just R your opponent, and then you have a very convenient passage to your opponent through the caster minions right next to them. This is slightly less relevant as your R already gives you a mark on your opponent, but based on what we'll talk about later, it can be very useful to know this. Alright, so as for the actual mechanics to take down your opponent, there's one thing so many Irelia players get wrong. One of the worst things that you can do as Irelia is be impatient with your E. Remember that one of the main points that we're making throughout this guide is just how strong Irelia is with her passive up. The damage through her auto attacks alone is crazy high, which should usually force your opponents to run away when you've got it fully stacked. What you want to do when you've got the upper hand on your opponent is just press your E once, then chase them down with auto attacks. Your opponent is going to be so preoccupied dodging your E that they'll just be juking back and forth, staying in your auto attack range for longer. Finally, once you've got a good read on their movement, you throw out your E and finish them off. And as a quick side note, keep in mind that your E is a ranged ability that you have the luxury of trying to land before deciding to go in. A mistake new Irelia players make is queuing in, then trying to land their E, in which case, if it misses, they have already committed to the fight. Whereas if you fish for E's until you land it and then go in, you remove that risk. Alright, next up is learning just exactly why all the Irelia plays you see in montages look so crazy. The Irelia is always dashing around everyone, dodging everything. How can you possibly do that yourself, you might wonder? Well, we're going to be honest, most of that is just luck. The Irelia players aren't actually calculating every little detail as they do this, most of them at least. What's going on and why it happens so consistently is simple. Queuing around minions in the middle of fighting your opponent is just something you should be doing anyway. Keep in mind that Irelia's Q both applies on hit effects and heals you for a bit whenever you use it. All this means is that whenever there are low health minions around your opponent, that there is literally no reason to not queue them as you're fighting them. You're gaining health back for free. This becomes especially more potent as you pick up lifesteal from either your items or runes. Each Q that you use on a minion will heal you more and more as the game progresses and you acquire more sustain. On top of that, you should remember that your Q actually places you directly behind your target. This is naturally just going to confuse players a little more, especially with how many dashes Irelia has. Think about it, if you dash through someone, you're now behind them. Dash again and you are in front of them. When all these confusing dashes are coming out at hyper speed around your opponents, it is going to confuse them. What we're getting at is that you're going to inadvertently outplay your opponents a lot of the time, even if you're just randomly dashing around minions. We're not taking anything away from really skilled Irelia players who make the champion look crazy, but we don't want you to be scared off by the champion because you think that she is ridiculously hard to play or requires some insane APM, mechanics, or reflexes. A lot of your outplays are going to potentially be unintentional just because you were dashing around minions trying to lifesteal a bit. Alright, next up you'll want to maximize your W's damage whenever possible. As you should know by now, most of Irelia's damage comes from her passive auto attacks. If you're auto attacking someone to death, You definitely don't want to waste precious auto attacks by trying to charge your W for the extra damage. So a neat little trick that you can do to get around this is simple. Inevitably, as you're auto attacking someone, they will go outside of your auto attack range. The second they leave your auto range, begin channeling your W for the damage amplification. But once they're just about to leave your Q's range, you cancel it and Q on top of them to keep auto attacking. It is not a massive deal to do this, but if you're trying to etch out every ounce of damage that you possibly can, then you should definitely apply this whenever possible. Another great tip in regards to getting more damage out of your W is actually to begin channeling it when you're expecting to be CC'd. While in the stance, you can't actually be knocked out of it by anything. If you're going to be crowd controlled anyway, it's a good idea to throw out your W so that you can charge it while you can't do anything else to get more damage out of it, and to block some damage from the enemy, of course. As a final tip, when it comes to taking towers as Irelia, you want to keep your passive up for as long as possible. A lot of lower elo Irelia players instantly clear waves when taking the tower for free. But what you want to do is space out how quickly you kill the enemy wave if there is one near the enemy tower. You should only kill the minions to refresh your passive so that you can keep your DPS up as much as possible to help you destroy it more quickly. As you can see, a lot about Irelia isn't actually having crazy mechanics, but about having proper knowledge of the champion. As far as actual mechanical combos go, she doesn't have that many, so let's quickly run through them. There's only two, so let's start with the first, R Flash. The sequence is basically the name of the combo. Instead of pressing flash and then R, you do the reverse. If you don't know, this is known as an animation cancel. It just makes your R come out faster than if you had flashed first. It's good for catching people off guard, which is vital since Irelia's R is an ability that you definitely don't want to be missing. The second combo is E, R, Q, E. Very simply, one of the hardest parts of playing Irelia is just landing her E consistently. Without it, you miss out on a stun and a vital Q reset, which is a ton of potential damage. The point of this combo is simple. You press your E, then throw out your R and dash along with it. This creates a lot of flashing lights on your opponent's screen. It can be very hard for them to tell exactly what's going on. And in the middle of all that, you're pressing your E again, which they're very unlikely to see, making it way more consistent that you actually land the ability. Alright, finally let's wrap things up with an easy build path that will have you crushing people in no time. For your runes, you'll want to run a standard Conqueror page. Nothing fancy here. As for your skill order, you'll want to max R, Q, W, and finally E. As for your items, your first core will almost always be Blade of the Ruined King. This won't change unless a specific item is just really overpowered for a patch. Otherwise, Blade of the Ruined King just synergizes way too well with your kit. Here's a slightly confusing part though. Irelia works well with a lot of different mythic items. You will be 100% fine building any of these as they all fit her kit really well. You can just build whichever one you think is best in your games. That being said, for the players who follow patch notes closely, you should pay attention to which of these items is being buffed or nerfed each patch. Item power levels are consistently being shifted around, so if you pay close attention to which of these items is strongest each patch, then you'll have a slight edge over most other Irelia players. Or if you watch high elo content a lot, then you can just copy what the top players are doing every patch. Lastly, you just finish your build off with standard bruiser items. Her itemization is very simple outside of her mythic selection. And if you want to keep learning to do similar things to improve fast and get the rank that you've always wanted, then check out SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.